Hey, it's Soul, bringing you the word of Warcraft, and well, I haven't said that in a while. But anyway, this is another video, and today I wanted to go over the 3 comics that have been released over the past couple of weeks from Blizzard. These are all the things that are preceding the Battle for Azeroth expansion, coming in about 2 months or so. This whole thing was a fun read and a feast for the eyes, and what I wanted to do today is do an analysis of just what it is that we're looking at here, what are the things that we've learned, and what kind of things might we be speculating pretty soon. As you can see, I'm going to be free talking it here, and I had just finished a stream where I was free talking it for about, I don't know, almost 2 hours or so, but you're going to get a nice, lovely, compressed version of it, okay? So here we go. Starting off with the Jaina comic, there wasn't a whole lot going on. We just really got a filler, like 1,000 years of war for Jaina. It just lasted about 1 or so years as to what she's been up to. And ultimately, it's been just a lot of brooding. Soloing demons and otherwise just brooding over the decisions that she's made over the past couple of years. When she stopped the fight in the Undercity, when she let her father get killed. And of course the what ifs. What if she had decided to do things differently? The brooding went on until she decided to go home and see how things are for herself. And doubtlessly she's been looked at in a pretty negative light. So now she just wants to, I guess, right her wrongs. The second comic, and obviously I'm glossing through these first 2 because there's not a whole lot going on. This one kind of upset me too because it's Magni again. We already had a comic with Magni before Legion, and now we're having one before the Battle for Azeroth. I mean, it makes sense. He's going to be a very central figure as to the progression of this upcoming expansion, where he's going to be the kind of executor of Azeroth's will, the one who's going to be directing us, the champions of Azeroth, into saving its ass. As for the actual context and the meat of the comic, though, there's nothing new. It's pretty much a follow-up to the previous comic after all the events of Legion had happened. Obviously, we already know what Magni's motivations are. We're just kind of underpinning the threat to the world. Anyway, let's get into the meat of things. There are a ton of theories and all sorts of crazy conclusions that people are coming to from this newest comic, the Three Sisters comic. And you folks know me, I love trying to deconstruct some of these conclusions from the perspective of a horde cuck. So I'm going to give my impressions of some of the more important bits of this comic. And like I had said, if you haven't looked at this thing yet, do so now, go away, come back, and listen to what I have to say so you can downvote and disagree. Many readers haven't been able to stop talking about these whispers. Can never be enough. Prove your love. You know, the way I see it, they're more like little imp voices that are just kind of be like, this is what we're trying to do.
Stop resisting, give in, and become one with us. It's only a matter of time.
Maybe I think the Void Whispers sound like goblins, I don't know. The way I see the Void is that they will say anything in order to just get into your head and finally get through to what they're trying to do, which in this case is to either kill Turalyon or turn him or something like that. What the Void has successfully done, and it's not so much the Whispers that are doing it, it's simply the nature between the Void and the Light, is that it's causing friction in their relationship. The love for each other, but more importantly, the love for their son, I think is what binds them together. Meanwhile, the unfortunately least remarkable Windrunner sister has to deal with these forum posters, as I'm choosing to understand it. I think this is just kind of a whole tongue-in-cheek thing that Blizzard decided to write in just to highlight the kinds of debates that folks like you and I are having about, Sylvanas is evil, we have to give her this sort of absolute label. And yet, just like Blizzard, she only has so much control over the conversation. This is the line that I want to focus on, and it's not the whisper,
The throne of Silvermoon is yours, blah!
It's more like what Alleria is saying to Vereesa, that the voice, the whispers, is under control. I've learned to quiet the voices, to sift out the lies, even in times like these. This tells me that the voices and these whispers are happening all the damn time. Sometimes the voices get more intense, or sometimes maybe Alleria is just kind of having a lapse in focus and the voices somehow get through, or for the sake of we readers getting into what's going on, we just finally see, a sample of the whispers that are constantly going through our head. But that's the way that I see it, that the Void is a constant thing. You don't just go insane because you only hear whispers at opportune times. You hear it because it's going on all the goddamn time. And the line right up here is the other carrying factor, that the love for her son is her anchor. So it's kind of sad. It feels like it doesn't feel like there's a rift between Alleria and Turalyon, but just that the relationship has just kind of frayed. I mean, they have technically been together for well over 1,000 or so years. How much more do you have to talk about, right? How much more mystery is there with your spouse for after 1,000 years? But what this tells me is that Poor Eretor. I don't think he's gonna make it to the battle for Azeroth. I think something something awful is going to happen to him that's going to cause an irreparable rift between Alleria and Turalyon, or to just make Alleria totally flip out and go full-on Void Chick. Here's where the awkwardness starts, and it's kind of a bummer. Here we have the first two comics starring Jaina, starring Magni, and now we have the Windrunner sisters. Why is it that the first Horde character that really shows up, and has her own lines and everything, has to show up in like a creepy ass way? Sylvanas isn't someone that I imagine to be creepy who will just kind of sneak or can be like, surprise! Her appearance is followed by another reveal of the whispers that go through Alleria's head. And again, I want to emphasize that, at least in my opinion, this isn't the whispers suddenly appearing. I think that these whispers just go on constantly, and we as readers are just being exposed to it. There's a lot of focus on these two whispers, and let me read them out for you.
This one is dangerous. She is a threat and must be ended. Beware this one. She seeks the death of all things, all possibilities. End her threat. Murder her. Murder her. Save yourself and murder her. Save the world and murder her.
I think I overemphasized. Sorry. We see 3 levels of consciousness that's going on here. 1 are the crazy whispers. 2 is what she, in her own mind, assuming that she's still thinking with her own mind, what she's thinking. And then there's finally what she says, which is, it was nothing, your hand it's cold. That's all. Ha 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 ha. I've seen a number of opinions being pointed out to me that the Void fears Sylvanas somehow. The way I see it, the Void whispers are just sounding desperate. And it sounds pretty obvious. Here you have the freaking Horde war chief right in front of you, presumably alone. So of course the Void whispers are going to say anything that they possibly can to take her out, although the word murder is probably not the best use of words. But so far nothing happens, and the sisters go off to take Windrunner Spire, or at least cleanse it of the undead. So let's talk timeline really quick. According to this panel, it seems like it's very, very briefly after the events of Legion. I mean, we have Alleria and Turalyon seeing their statues for the first time. Azerite may or may not have been discovered yet because we have Magni grabbing this Azerite, but no goblins seem to be present. So there's a reasonable possibility that the events in the Sisters comic take place just before the Great Feast, the big speech from Anduin, and so on and so forth. So the actions that we see the 3 sisters take are the first actions that we've seen just right after Legion. Anyway, off the sisters go doing some badass things, but then Sylvanas wants to start a game, a very silly and stupid game that foreshadows, well, silliness. She and the other 2 sisters are going to give statements. 2 of them are truths, 1 of them is a lie. And the actual truths will be revealed at the end of their little journey. Alleria lied about the Void being a tremendous gift. It is in fact something that she struggles with every day, hence the whole explanation about the whispers constantly assailing her and threatening her sanity. Vereesa lied over getting over the death of her husband. As for Sylvanas, well, I think she lied the whole way through. I don't think she told the truth about wishing that she was still alive because, in a way, she mostly is. She knows what death means. She's pretty scared of it. She saw that death was pretty much a lot of nothing. So I think this was more like a play on words, and that Sylvanas really does think that she's alive. For her, simply existing means life. I think she lied about being proud of being War Chief of the Horde. If we go with the idea that this comic takes place just before the start of the Before the Storm book, the chapter preview that we received clearly indicated that Sylvanas isn't all that happy about being War Chief of the Horde. Maybe that doesn't give a good indicator about whether or not she's proud of it or not, but she's not very fond about the job. She would rather just be left alone to her own devices while someone else takes up the mantle. And I guess most importantly, she lied about saying that she would never betray her sisters. I really like this following exchange from the sisters. Alleria accuses Sylvanas of masterminding the plot to take out Garrosh Hellscream, but Sylvanas calls Vereesa out saying that it was her idea in the first place, and she also illustrates just how bad of a guy Garrosh is. Remember, Alleria had a lot of catching up to do as to what's been going on ever since she was gone. Her people were decimated, including her sister Sylvanas, who was turned into a freaking banshee, and Garrosh Hellscream was up to no good, leading the Horde into almost oblivion, and kind of kicking off the events of both Warlords of Draenor and Legion. The argument comes to a head, with Alleria and Sylvanas getting woke and ready to rumble. And again, we have the whispers up here saying anything possible in order to tempt Alleria into doing whatever the Void wants. I know I'm kind of hand-waving and stuff, but the idea of Sylvanas serving the true enemy is not something that I really buy into as something that's factual. It's just something that the Whispers are saying to Alleria in order to get her to take action. But Vereesa, in all her wisdom and tragedy, is able to come out with the best emotional statement to, well, put an end to the fight. The comic ends with almost nothing happening. Windrunner Spire is cleared, and the sisters share one final moment. Alleria and Vereesa reveal their lies, but Sylvanas declines. "No, I think we're done," she says. Vereesa reaches out to Sylvanas in kind of a follow-up to the sort of goodbye Dear John letter that she had sent at the end of War Crimes, where she decided to not join Sylvanas and unwittingly become a banshee. Or was it just an undead elf? What's curious is the way that Sylvanas is standing in this particular frame, because like I had said, if you had read the comic already, she could have signaled for her Dark Rangers to start opening fire and just unleash hell on her two sisters. In the end though, she did not, instead opting to listen to Vereesa's apology. It was heartfelt. We can see it, and it looks like whatever Sylvanas was about to do didn't happen. It's pretty obvious though. She was going to betray them, kill them, raise them as undead, and that possibly could have been the end of that. Nobody came out necessarily happy. It was peaceful, just not happy. The Void Whispers expressed disappointment, which again tells me that this really was an opportunity to cut off the head of the Horde and weaken it significantly. That could have been a very convincing argument for anyone who wasn't Sylvanas' sister. In this case, Alleria decided to not enact the Void's will and just went home. Sylvanas says to one of her rangers that she wants to let her sisters cling to their sorrow-filled lives a little longer, and that, in the end, they will serve death and they will serve me. It makes me wonder, does Sylvanas plan on like straight up killing them again, or does she just plan on letting nature run its course, knowing that she can't really die, and eventually they'll die, and she'll eventually come back and just bring them back, raise them to undeath? The other thing is, again, this seems to happen before the events of the Before the Storm book, before the official discovery of Azeroth, so we don't know what Sylvanas' ultimate plans are going to be. I mean, heck, during the events of the Before the Storm book, Sylvanas intended to sack Stormwind and raise everyone to undeath. So from the looks of it, Sylvanas has had multiple changes of plans. We can try calling her evil, or the ultimate enemy, or the enemy of the Void, but in the end, the comic only tells us so much. I'm finding it really hard to conclude just where these three are going to end up by the end of the Battle for Azeroth expansion, or even sooner than that, or even later. I do have a very strong feeling, though, that this meeting between all three of the sisters is more than likely going to be their last. So that's what I got from all this comic stuff. I don't think it's the prelude to some crazy revelations like death is the real big bad of the World of Warcraft or the Warcraft franchise. I'm still pretty convinced that first we're going to see a big light versus void sort of thing. Alleria versus Turalyon. Erator caught in the middle. Sylvanas as the war chief already has the rest of the alliance to worry about. I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of tragedy that is going to befall all three of these sisters. What and when is still up for debate. So those are my thoughts on the three comics, well, mostly this comic more than all the others, and I really hope that it's different from some of the other conclusions that we've been seeing on other videos and threads and what have you. Maybe I'm being a little bit sober by not drawing crazy, outlandish conclusions based on these whispers or from the actions of Sylvanas. I'm very much taking a more wait-and-see approach and simply enjoying the comics mostly for what they are. But I would love to hear your thoughts in a comment below. Of course, please like this video if you enjoyed it, or subscribe to the channel, and please consider becoming a patron so you can support what I do, so I can give you more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.